Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talking Points with KPI, episode number 68. Today, we are going over the KPI coaching method. Here with me today is Dan to my right, Chase, and then we have intern Ryan Edwards. He was on the podcast previous with Matt Maxon. He did a very good job, so we're going to get him back on here again today to give us kind of the player side of what we will be talking about today. So we'll just jump right into it. So we are going over the KPI coaching method. We are not going to give you the secret sauce on coaching methods at all in this place. So if that's what you think this is, it's not going to be that. It's going to be kind of the philosophy of why we do things, the way things Dan and Eric set up, and kind of how they went about it and made all that stuff happen. So we're just going to jump right into it. So the biggest ego thing that we've kind of talked about is how coaches outside of what we do, it's really just kind of, I'm right, you're wrong. Let's kind of just move past that. We talked about it before, but how can we kind of like make our way seem not original, because it is original, but in the forefront of what really needs to be done?
Our way is not novel.
No.
Meaning it's not new. It's definitely, I do think it is different than the skill development industry, and that's what we tend to speak to. The strength and conditioning industry, and we're talking about a humanity problem here. We're not talking about a coaching problem. We're just talking that people want to feel valued. People want to make the people around them better. People want to pass on their knowledge and help others learn from their experiences and leave a mark, leave a legacy. But there's a line and there's a way of doing it so that the most possible athletes can have success. I don't want to jump ahead of some of the talking points, but I think the way we've set things up here is to enable as many athletes as possible to have success and not be limited by the coaches we have inside this building.
And I think that's a good talking point. Like, we enable the athlete. I think a lot of the lesson model enables the coach to be in that center forefront of, I'm right because I'm the one giving you these ideals. And so I'm going to go jump right to it, Ryan, but how have you, in your playing career, right, and you can take it either baseball-wise or training-wise, and it comes to every term that comes to mind is the player's coach, right? It's the guy that kind of puts the athletes first. How have you seen that guy work over the I know everything, do what I'm told?
Well, I feel like here we're branching away from the my way or the highway approach, and we preach it all the time, individualized, and it's just coaches here are bettering you, and something that works for you is not going to help another person in a sense, so it's strictly for the player, for each player.
Yeah. And so, I was just about to say, go on that.
Yeah. No, I think it's to the point of I'm always right. The coaching, I'm always right. It's my way or the highway. To your point, is like what that doesn't leave room for is his solution to his ability to get the most out of his body, right? Yeah. To execute a skill. And so it's like when we're talking about I'm right, it's my way or the highway, it doesn't leave room for the athlete to find a solution. You give me 10,000 hitters, I will show you 10,000 different solutions to the same thing. So my way or the highway applies to how many then, right? Sure. And that's kind of the idea of behind athlete-centered and being individualized, is to allowing the athlete to be the athlete. It's like so simple, but it's not easy necessarily, because it's your ego still fills that void a little bit, but it's just trying to make sure that we do put the athletes first so then they can be successful in their own way.
Yeah. I think one of the first things we rallied against was this is the way we've always done things. And I'm at this table currently, I'm the oldest person here, so my playing career and Chase, your playing career wasn't that long ago, and we're still seeing coaches do things, whether it's in the weight room or on the field or in a lesson, doing things that we did when we were kids. And we have come, there weren't smartphones when I was in middle school.
True.
Like the internet was just becoming a thing as I graduated high school. The amount of information and education that's out there at your fingertips is exponentially more than we've ever had. So you have no excuse to do, well, this is what we've done. Well, look at the success we've had. The numbers don't lie. The number of athletes that are going on and achieving their goals and reaching their full potential is far and few between. There are way more athletes who burn out or quit or get hurt or just decide to go somewhere else. I think that was the first thing we really rallied against is, hey, the way that we're doing things is limiting a lot of athletes. And I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I did. And I think that's probably where you can take your ego and spin it into a positive. It's like, hey, my experiences are valuable. and I want to use them in a way that is going to help the next generation of ball players, so you don't have to go through the same pains and ups and downs that I went through.
Mistakes and all
Yes,
that,
and I think that's probably where the ego starts, but then it morphs into this again. I'm this authority. Trust the process. Don't question me. I know everything. You know nothing. You know, again, dealing with Ryan Edwards, like, our athletes are more intelligent than ever before.
Yes.
Because of the internet component I just talked about.
And so I want to keep you on that topic, but why do you think, and this is going to get to that topic that you wanted to talk about, but why do you think that the ego side of the coaches, where does that justification come from? Is it I've played before, I wasn't horrible, so I'm going to do the things that I did, or is it I saw one video on YouTube that worked for me, so I'm just going to run with it?
I think the ones that have well intentions or good intentions have had a playing experience that is valuable, that others can learn from, and it starts there. I do think that's probably a small percentage.
Yeah.
I do think a percentage is afraid of challenge or authority, meaning this is what I did. You just listen to what I like. Trust me, I'll get you there. And it starts off as good, but then it turns into a shield of like, okay, hey, don't question me. Like I played at this level, or I made it to college, or I made it to the pros. And I think that population that tends to be the ones we kind of complain about the most.
And it happens. I've seen it happen in this facility. Like sometimes there's a kid that you don't know what to do with, and it happens to be in an environment to where we can go, okay, let's go to another person who knows what that's about. We figure that solution out. Everybody's on the same page. I feel like when you get to a lesson model and there's only one guy, and you accelerate to where the point of he doesn't know what he's dealing with at this point, now he's just chipping you back because you're just working on the same old things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's for the people with good intention but still fall into that ego-filled model. It's like we are in the service industry, so it's really hard to sit and think that what you could be doing could be wrong, or it's human nature to be able to say I'm doing this right because we want to give to the athlete, we want to be right, we want to. It's human, right? Like that's part of the ego component of it. But it's the irony behind that is like if we don't continue to adapt and learn and understand our athletes, build a relationship with our athletes, give athletes the freedom, then ultimately you are pigeonholing people in one spot.
I really like that topic. So Ryan, I'm going to ask you this question, right? And I want you to go back on previous experiences, but how does it feel now, right? Before you were just told, I want you to do this, you're going to feel this, even if you didn't feel that. It's like, it's going to be felt this way, to now where you are given the opportunity to think about what you're doing and talk about it and understand it. How do you think that knowledge base has kind of helped you accelerate your training?
Well, it's like the help's always here. You're given the tools, but then there's also that freedom side to it. So it's like, oh, I can go try this, and then you have the other voices you can go to. This felt good, or this did not feel good. And it's not like, oh, well, you weren't doing it right. It's okay. Let's ride what you felt that was good. And if something didn't feel good, it's like, all right, we'll back off. We'll try something different.
And so hearing that, I want you to kind of talk about, and we can jump as far back as to when you started the place, but like how does that feel to hear, like, and again, talk about kind of the coaching philosophy you wanted to implement. How does that make you feel about it?
I want to preface, every coach goes through this stage.
Yes.
I went through it pretty much like my last year of college, all the way up until the very first gym I helped open. That would have been like 2013, 14, and it failed after the first year. So I needed a lot of failure to show you, like, hey, I joke, I'm the firstborn, I know all the answers. I needed a lot of failures. Like, hey, you don't have this all figured out. Yeah. And I was very lucky to run into another gym, BRX Performance, where they were doing a lot of things right. And I was like, man, like, there's so much more out there. There's so much more education and information. So I don't want to, like, oh, look at all these ego-filled coaches. They're so dumb. It's like, no, like, we all go through the same stage where it's like, I am in the service industry. I want to feel good and valued. I want you to feel like, oh, Ryan, how did that drill? Did you like, oh, it felt great. Dan, like, oh, how'd that arm care exercise? Oh, yeah, I'm feeling so much better. Yeah. Like, we as coaches, we want those moments because that's what fills up our gas tank. That's what makes us feel good. Yeah. But we have to figure out that line. I think the intention at the start, or I guess the best example I can give of this is as the strength coach. When we first started, make you bigger, faster, stronger. That's all that matters. We'll do arm care. We'll do mechanics. I was doing a lot of the throwing programs at that point in time. And there was kids that weren't in the program working with Eric that would go off to their high schools or their other travel ball teams and not have success or get hurt. Yeah. And I'm like, what the heck? And so I made it a very tangible example. I was like, I was taking an athlete and supercharging their engine, but then they had no control over their car.
The frame's just everywhere.
And so they were getting hurt. And so I was like, okay, I have to put my ego aside, and I could go and say, well, no, I'll be your pitching coach and your strength coach. That's what I did at the very first gym.
Yeah.
I'll be your strength coach and your pitching coach. We'll fix this. And then it became very apparent that, okay, I can either become this jack of all trades and master of none, or I go all in on strength and conditioning, and I partner with other coaches who round out my expertise so that if I'm the most important person with this athlete, you're 120 pounds, you can't do a body weight push-up, you're hanging out with me. If you were just talking to Justin, like if you're with Justin Kessler Johnson, he maxed out every strength quality in the world, but he needs to be in the cage working on his swing, and he hangs out with Chase the entire time. That's where I think where the ecosystem that we're trying to create is whatever is going to help that athlete achieve their goals, whether it's a person, a drill, an exercise, we need to get them with that person, and as soon as possible, because we can't waste any time.
Yeah, because it takes time. And that's the hard
Takes
part.
a lot of time.
The amount of patience, and I think that's where it's easy to fall back into the ego thing, is you have to have a lot of patience to be able to understand that, like, the human body takes a long time in the weight room, let alone in the skill, you know?
Yeah, I think the that's probably where the root of this was. Just like, hey, and it's very common in the personal training world. You know, they talk about this all the time, where it's like, if somebody's hurt, like, I've learned the hard way of, like, oh, I can fix that. I can give you this. I can give you that, and they don't get better, or they get worse, and that ultimately that person's not going to train with you anymore. And so I learned that the very hard way. It's like, I know my limits, and then when I would send you out. And so I think on the skill side, it's like, hey, I know my limits, or I recognize that this athlete weighing 120, 30, 40 pounds, they could be doing lessons with me, and I could make a bunch of money on the side and get all this cash under the table, but they're going to get capped out. They're going to be limited, and then either they're going to have to go out and find some other strength coach to get them better, whether what they're doing is actually helping them, or that person's just like, well, this is as good as I get. And I think that's where getting rid of the ego-filled coach within this building was due to a lot of limitations personally and failures with whether it was players or businesses, whatever. It was a ton of failure that led to, like, hey, I don't have all the answers as an individual, but as a group, as a team, we can do this together.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the core of this.
And so now I want to jump to you, Ryan, kind of get away. I know I said I wanted you to talk from the player perspective, but now you're an intern, right? Just start a fresh incoming coach into a place that has set systems for coaching, right? A lot of these places talk about how they have systems for coaching, and we want these guys to do this, but they really just talk about it once a month and are like, okay, what are you doing for drills, right? And we know that. You going through this system, how have you understood that this place kind of separates the fact that we kind of train coaches a little bit differently in that aspect?
Well, kind of like what Dan was saying, I feel like every coach has their own role. So it's like if you're not an expert on one, there is someone else that is.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that trust factor is like, okay, I don't know all the answers. I can go to someone else who, might have some, or someone else who has all the answers, kind of thing in this building. So that was the first thing I noticed. There's not one voice.
Yes.
There's not one like overpowering, like, oh, it's my way. There's every single person that has their own, part of the entire facility.
I think that's on purpose. Because a lot of another I guess another justification of going into this business and going this direction is people get, and this being just extremely brutally honest, before we created KPI, on the travel ball side of things, and softball is a great example of this, people get attached to people.
True.
And so they want to follow this coach, and that coach has all the answers, and then you get to your junior year of high school, and one or two players make it to the next level, and then all of a sudden, a lot of that team doesn't make it anywhere.
Yeah.
Or you get smacked in the face much earlier, and you don't even make the varsity team, right? And I think in the travel ball world, getting attached to a coach, you're creating a bottleneck. To where at some point that person's expertise is going to be limited. No, not even the greatest hitter in the world, greatest coach in the world. At some point, they're not going to be able to help you solve your problems.
Yeah, it's just happenstance. Nobody knows that much.
Yes, and so I think once that, because that bit us really hard, bit us in the butt really badly at the start. So that made it very clear. Hey, we need to get athletes at the center of this process because they're the most important thing, and then build a system around them versus try and find the expert coaches and get them in here and then build the system around their expertises. And I think that was also it was a intentional business move where I don't want this to be the Chase Spivey hitting program, and Chase doesn't want to be the Chase Spivey hitting program, and I don't want it to be the Dan strength and conditioning program because like I just don't like that.
Yeah.
And we've had coaches where like, no, I want this to be the Noah Dobbins show, and I look at me, I'm so smart. And it's like, you're just not going to fit in here. You're not going to be a good coach within our system because you're not going to get fulfillment. You're going to get fulfillment out. Hey, I built out this thing, this system, implemented that, and look how much better. Look how many more athletes we can help and handle. That's the coaches that thrive in our business currently.
And it really just goes back to athlete-centered. Like, I mean, we talk about it all the time. We've talked about it since the first podcast that you guys have probably started. You guys have talked about how you want to put the athlete first, and I think that's a really good point because a lot of these coaches go, I made that guy. It's like, well, no, that guy kind of made himself. You just kind of were guardrails to whatever success he made.
There was two people that made that kid.
Yeah.
There's two people that made that kid.
His mom and his dad.
Not you. To all the people. The genetic component is the genetic piece.
The only people that can say that.
That was good.
If anyone can take ownership of anybody,
Mom
and dad. And once they get to 18, then hands off. Like,
yeah, that was good.
You're a free person. So
Absolutely.
To the coach centered. This is my hitting program. This is my pitching program. This is my whatever. That it goes back into the same thing of if that's the reason why you go through it, you're ultimately limiting the athletes because you're trying to justify because you want it to be
Why
your
you're
show.
right, yeah.
So it's like you're already starting with the wrong premise, right?
Yeah.
It's already wrong. That's the whole reason why we talk about this all the time about making sure that coaches are not the center of it because it doesn't make it that you're not allowing freedom for the athlete.
And it's subjective. I think the
Yeah.
other easy example, Ryan, you did some of the training that I had written before the force plates. Like you were doing workouts that I had written, and I was influenced by Cressy and Reinhold and all those guys and all those names. And it was good programming. Guys were throwing harder. Guys were getting better. Don't get me wrong. We wouldn't be at this point if that weren't the case. Yeah. Chase came along. He had a level of expertise that I did not have. He understood a piece of tech that we wanted to implement, and I basically said, "All right, prove it." Yeah. And he did. And I was like, "All right, we'll change everything." We're changing the entire S&C program. I don't think people understand what that means.
No,
literally flipped it on its head and got rid of almost everything, even exercise-wise. Exercise selection has drastically changed. And I think that's another component. Like the coaches that thrive within this building, they like accountability. It used to make me nervous when we would do reports. I didn't like doing reports. Like, oh God,
I have to make it.
is this gonna work? I don't know. I don't like doing this. I don't want to work it. And that's why we would wait till the last minute when we first started doing those reports. Yeah. And once we kind of got over the hump of like, no, we know our stuff works. Yeah. We know it works. We need to go after, and what we're doing for this next year is we're going after adherence. Well, we need kids to do it. Sure. And I think those are the coaches that like that, thrive in that environment of like, hey, I know this works, you just got to do it. Yeah. Like those are the coaches that are going to do well at KPI.
Well, even to that point, we have coaches here that like if they will not, and there's a lot of people who will hide their mistakes. Like everybody here does not hide mistakes. They go, this is what happened. This is why it didn't work. This is what we'll do in the future to fix it. And I think that's and again, it goes back to the ego thing, like, and to even just talk about the point you just had. Like, you could have totally gone, no, Chase, like, cool, I understand you know more. Cool. Like, that's great.
No,
we're still going to do this.
We've been doing this for a long time, and it's the best strength program, so we're not going to change it. Look at all these guys that I got better.
You easily
don't know what
done
you're
that.
talking about.
Yeah.
You know, like, and then I could be like, well, I'm an owner.
Exactly.
I don't have to listen
you
to
don't
you.
Have
You're an employee. And it's like, no. If it's truly about the athlete getting better, then it doesn't matter how they get better.
It doesn't matter.
It shouldn't.
No.
And I think that's probably the main thing we're trying to go after in this
For sure.
in this building.
And being able to keep building it to where it's like, all right, if it works, then yeah, let's roll with it. If it doesn't, well, then let's wing it. Like, it's not, there's no reason why, and that's the reason why, like, once we got over the hump, to your point of like, hey, we're going to look at all this. Here's the context in which these things happened. Okay, these things didn't work, and we thought they were. All right, well, we're going to adjust this. But hey, these things work. These things work. The main part of the system worked. Now we're looking at the athletes and how the results happened. Okay, now we're going to adjust because for an adherence problem, like, we want to build an environment that forces kids to then actually do everything that we're doing, and then we'll take a look and see how that happens, and we'll adjust. And like, we're constantly evolving, and that's the idea. That's what takes ego out.
Yeah, I think sorry, Ryan, if you got something to say.
From a player's perspective, there's also that trust factor. So it's like what you were saying. It's like, okay, we know this works. We've proven that it works. Now it's just the buy-in with the athletes. So I feel like the environment here makes it easy to do that with just the success that we've had.
Yeah, that's another thing we didn't talk about, the environment.
But yeah, so it makes guys want to buy in.
Yeah, I think the other good example of this was when you first started was like CLA, constraints-led approach, ecological approach to coaching, like not feeling like I am gifting you with this knowledge, or I need to say this, or I need to coach you, I need to break things down, I need to like tinker with everything. It's like, okay, I'm going to give you a drill, I'm going to give you a focus, and then let you figure it out. And that's another obstacle a lot of coaches struggle in this building. Yeah. Even in the weight room, coaches, like, and I still struggle, like, I want you to coach, and I want to make sure kids are doing things things correctly. But I also don't want you to micromanage. I want them to be free. Like, you hate this. Like, if a kid skips his lift, then it's on them. Like, they have to learn that lesson. I'd rather them learn it in something as silly as working out in baseball versus they get to something in their life, say their job, and they're like, well, I don't have to do the work because my boss isn't watching me. Like, there's way more consequences to that.
You learn that one the hard way.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And then all of a sudden you're 45 and fired, and you got to figure out your life. Like, I'd rather you learn it when you're 13.
That's so true.
So I think that there are things that we've set up in this space to truly put the athlete at the center. Some parents probably hate some of that stuff too. Like I really don't care that you hate it. Like, you should. It's your child. You gave birth to them. They're yours. You have the conversation. And don't get me wrong. We still have those conversations. But I think the that component is really important. So
and I like the accountability piece a lot, because I think that's in my brain, that's where I think a lot of this less than ego-filled stuff comes from, is like the accountability piece. It's like, if that kid doesn't do well, I can blame it on him. But if he does do well, it's my fault.
It's always
like, I feel like that's a win-win. Exactly, and there's no there's no accountability there for anyone.
And we struggle with this. I mean, that's why, like, we've had multiple families tell, like Eric and I specifically, like, you guys need a market. You need to talk more about the athletes that you're helping, and it is because both of us were both of us were the same page of, like, I mean, like, yes, guys are getting better, but there's also guys that aren't getting better.
True.
And do we belittle those athletes that aren't getting better? Are we putting these other ones on a pedestal? And there were guys that, like, hey, like, if we're going to take credit for the good, then you have to take credit for the bad. And with our systems now, we do take credit for both. Like, internally, we know everything that's going on with every single athlete. Externally, yes, we are promoting and doing a better job of showing, hey, these athletes are doing what we tell them to do, and they're getting better. But I think that was a big struggle at the start too, because again,
you never want to be seen in that light. Like,
it's in a micro version of this is the hitting coach. Like, you square a ball up, hey, good. And then like you have your slump or whatever. Like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? You know,
we talked about this.
Why can't you do that again?
This is the environment's been this way for a long time. I mean, it's like the pro ball mindset is you have to be the expert. It's the only way you get to the big leagues, right? You have to coach. You have to be expert. It's all about you. And so then coming in here and being forced into a position to where, like, it's like you almost learn, like, okay, yeah, you're totally right. And you come in, you're like, yo, let the athletes do their thing. Like, oh, shit, that works. Okay,
well,
cool. Let's do it. Okay, cool. Right? Like,
And again, it's probably from the experience that I've had in here, but like the enjoyment that I've seen the coaches get in here from when a kid figures it out is way more exciting than when the coach tells the kid to do something and he just does it. Like, that excitement feels way more genuine when you go, okay, did you get it? And you can see him, the wheels are spinning and spinning hard, and then he's like, boom, yeah, I got it, and you just light up. You're like, yeah, let's do it. Like, that doesn't happen when a lesson, because it's just like, yeah, do this. Oh, great, you did it. Like, that doesn't happen.
It's I think the perfect example. Limited number of people will get this, but Karate Kid. It's like Mr. Miyagi versus, what was the other guy's name? I can't even remember his name.
Yeah. No,
it's not
Jeff.
But
My name is
you know what I'm
Jeff.
talking about? Like, he was like, he's at the front of the dojo. He's yelling at everybody. He's the driver. He's the yelling him on the mat. Like that's what the coaches that you see out there.
It's the Drago thing.
Exactly. And then the reverse of that, and it's like, okay, he ended up being the best fighter. Yeah. So I it's like I joke because kids won't get the reference, but like, it's like we're Mr. Miyagiing you. Like, you have no clue that you're working out what you're working on, and you're doing those stupid hip mobility drills. You're like, this is really boring. I just want to go throw my bullpen. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I mean, we had a kid the other day. Remember, it's Noah from up north. He was, I'm struggling to throw strikes. I'm having a hard time getting in the zone. I was like, okay, let's take you through the screen again. It was like this, and this. He was like, go do these drills. Go out and throw your bullpen, and he was like, "Yeah, I felt better." And he texted me recently, like, "Hey, dude, I've been in the zone. I'm feeling good. My velo's back, and I'm hitting my spots." I was like, "What do you know?" Like, we didn't need to do a whole mechanical breakdown of why you can't throw strikes. We just
understand the machine that's happening, right? Be able to adjust and then go. And then and that's where it's easy. Like, and this is what I like about what we do here, is because it would be easy for Dan to flip around and be like, I did this.
Yeah,
and that's why he's doing
that.
this. Yeah. And it's like, we don't pitch for him. We don't swing for him. We don't, you know what I mean? It's just the way it is. Like,
we never will.
No.
Oh, then because the worst is the travel ball coach, like my guys or my players or my team or my girls or whatever. Like, look at like I think the funniest one, and the justification's hilarious. I asked somebody a long time ago, why does every softball travel ball team put the name, like the coach's name at the end of the team? And they go, oh, well, it's easy for the college coaches to know who's on what team. I was like, no, it's not. It has everything to do with your name being on the team, you ego freaking loser. Like, you had a crappy career, or you never played softball, because that's 90% of softball coaches. So you need to feel good about yourself, because look, I have the winningest team, and I'm going to put my last name on. Yeah, I asked that a long time ago. And they're like, oh, it's so on the rosters, so all the college coaches that come look at my team, they know which team I play for. Yeah. Because there's so many blah, blah, blah teams. And I was like, it's like he's here. Like the baseball side doesn't do that, and the college coaches have no problem getting a hold of who they need to get a hold of. So it just we can go all day on this. We can go all day.
So one last thing I want to talk about before we wrap it up. But KPI coaches are certified in multiple aspects of training in baseball healthcare. The KPI athletes have been dominating and staying healthy at the same time due to this process. Talk about how you even thought of wanting to make sure that the coaches are certified in this stuff.
Yeah, I have my degree in kines.
Yep.
And I used to start off all the assessment talks. I don't know if I did this with you, but all of the assessment talks. I have my degree in kinesiology. I have my master's in exercise physiology. I'm a certified strength and conditioning coach. I'm on-base use certified. Yep. I am a Rapsoda, blah, 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 blah. I'm all these things, right? And people were just like, can you just, I don't care about you. Like, I don't really care about that stuff. And I think we've, luckily so, gotten to the point that like KPI carries such a strong name and brand name. Yeah, they trust it. Yeah. And myself and Eric, we have all these degrees and advanced degrees and certifications, and our staff does too. We promote and push education as much as we possibly can. I think that's why we have the ability to help solve problems for so many athletes. Yeah. But I do think it's something that kind of gets lost, where it's like
no, it does, and I think that's one thing that I wanted to bring it up at the end, is that like a lot of people don't understand that we didn't just grow up with this knowledge. Like we didn't just spawn in and we knew all the stuff about baseball. Like, I know I had to go through a bunch of hitting stuff before I was even allowed to be near the floor. I had to go through a lot of strength stuff as well to make sure that I was capable enough to run a system like this. So for the people that are out there just like, where do these guys get all this knowledge from? It's like, we have to go through a lot of and it's, I wouldn't say hard work, but it's very needed and it's very good work at the same time.
It's my favorite thing to say to a coach. Number one, and we used to say this all the time, I don't care what your opinion is.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Number one. Number two, everything you bring to the table, your experience is valuable.
Yes.
But I need you to master our systems first before then you can adjust our system. We're going through this with Drew right now. Drew, and you're very intelligent, you want to upgrade all the strength side and the force plates and all this stuff, awesome. I need you to master ours right now, and he's doing a fantastic job of that. Then you can start writing programming, you can build out lifts, you can do all these things because you know and understand where I'm starting exactly. So then I actually know how to upgrade.
What got us here in the first place.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then by all means, let's make it better.
Yes, through your hitting coaches and adding hitting drills. The skill side is it can go into it's the wild west. There's a bajillion different drills, right? So
we talked about that. That's the cool thing. We try them. Oh, yeah. Like, and we put them through. We have our interns try drills and have our interns try all this stuff out, like to make sure that that there's not a disconnect from athlete to coach, because that's another thing I think that a lot of facilities don't really care about, and I know we kind of don't care about it on the surface level, but I think asking it, like we talk about all the time in meetings, asking an athlete how their day was, like just simple stuff like that the KPI coaches do, that a lot of lessons get kind of thrown under the rug, because like you said, you're hitting for a straight hour. Like you're not doing anything but taking flips for an hour. Yeah. Like there's no outside cage time where another kid's hitting and you get a chance to, it happens all the time. Like we have content pieces on this. So I think that's another thing that a lot of people kind of get swept under the rug, is how personable our coaches are.
The 100% that. The system sets it up so that the athlete and the coach can develop a relationship. Yes. Mm-hmm. Whereas like in the average, a team practice, a lesson, you have limited amounts of time. And so the way this plays out on the team side, a coach has their favorites.
Yes, of course.
It's not true. The coach likes the kids that are good, don't get me wrong. But the coach has their favorites because the kids who don't get enough attention at practice think the coach doesn't like them. Yeah. And it's just, it's not anything other than it's a ball neck. There's not enough time. Mm-hmm. And a lot of practices have one coach or two coaches. So it's impossible to develop a relationship with every single kid, where in this building, for the most part, every single kid knows every single coach in some varying degree, or knows who they are. So I think that's huge. And I do think we need to highlight this. there is a ton of back-end. I think you now have realized this. The amount of back-end work that leads into a session.
Yes.
So a single kid can have a workout program that's fully individualized based off their screens and their tech and their data. The amount of work that goes into that is extensive.
Days of work.
We don't just show up to a session like, all right, here's what we're doing today. It's not, again, the average practice or average lesson, like the coach just shows up and says like a couple hits off the tee. And you're like, all right, here's what we're working on, and it just happens to be the same 5 drills the kid did before them. Or a team practice, it's like, okay, we sucked at base running, so we're doing base running today.
Yeah.
We sucked at this, we're going to work on this. Like all of our coaches who are going to go out to the field today to do youth practices, they're practice planning right now. And that practice planning is built off of previous practice plans that they're making better as they go.
And team coaches have the ability to talk to other coaches about practice planning.
Yeah.
Like there's no, and I love that. There's no disconnect anywhere.
There's a set number of skills we know that scale to the next level.
Yes.
We need to hammer those. We're not going to do firsts and thirds and bunt Ds forever because that skill does not scale to the next level. That's very easy to learn. It just takes a little time and effort.
Pretty quick.
Exactly. Yes.
About 6 reps each. We're good.
I do think I want to highlight the amount of work that our staff does across the board to get ready for sessions and be prepared for 200 plus kids.
Yeah.
I think the
More in the summer.
Yeah, the scalability of
More in the
this
summer.
has gotten extensive, and it's because of all of the back end work that our staff does.
No, for sure. All right, we kind of crushed that. I'm not gonna lie. Thank you guys very much for listening to Talking Points with KPI, episode number 68. Eric Sims, if you're watching this, you could possibly do 69 if you wanted, but just throwing it out there. Please make sure you follow us on all of our social medias at Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, and then please go subscribe to the YouTube channel at Kinetic Performance Institute. Once again, this is Talking Points with KPI, episode number 68. Have a great day.